The terminology in the restorative justice movement, particularly focusing on restorative dialogue, when you allow victims and offenders and community people to come together in families, can be very confusing at times. The term mediation is used at times, or conferencing, or meetings, or circles, but it all involves a process of creating a safe place to bring people together, where they can talk with each other, where the facilitator or, quote, mediator is more in the background, in a more non-directive situation. This all began way back in the 1960s, when mediation, in contemporary times, relatively speaking, came into practice more in different states and developed as a movement. And it was grounded in giving neighborhoods and communities more power to deal with local conflicts. And it was very much problem-solving oriented, settlement kind of focused. The restorative justice movement began to develop in the 1970s and kind of overlapped some of the mediation movement, but it was quite different. Similar but different. And that's what I really want to talk about. And I want to make something very clear from the point, at this point. Any kind of mediation is good, and there's plenty of good empirical evidence, research studies, to show that even the most problem-solving, settlement-driven mediation has a pretty positive impact on the parties in terms of agreements reached and some of the outcomes. But what I really want to focus on is something we've learned through 4 decades of research and practice in restorative justice, and that is the importance of more of a humanistic approach to mediation or dialogue or conferencing or circles, whatever you call it. A humanistic approach to mediation and dialogue is about humanizing the process itself and for the participants. It's dialogue-driven, not settlement-driven. And here's one of the ironies. Even though the focus is on creating a safe place for dialogue between the parties with the mediator or facilitator very much in the background, you tend to get good agreements that flow out of that. Apparently because people feel more ownership in it, more involvement, that they've really been heard. A humanistic approach is not a one-size-fits-all, here's the 5 steps, you must do this first, then this, then this, then this. No. A humanistic approach to mediation and dialogue is a way of being present with people who have been harmed and those who have harmed others. A way of being present with them, not just a way of, quote, doing and talking and fixing. In other words, it's a very humbling process for mediators and facilitators, or whatever term you use for the person who's trying to help them. It's coming to grips with something I've learned so many years ago as a practitioner and as a researcher. And I really do mean this. It's my belief that people who come to us and ask help and assistance in entering a restorative justice dialogue process, whether it's called mediation or conferencing or whatever, need us far less than we think they need us. Yes, they need us to clear the path, to prepare them, to create a safe enough place, to hold that space. But they also need us to get out of the way, to close the mouth, to be more in the background, not passive, as though we're tuned out and thinking about other stuff. No, no, no. We're totally present. But we're not speaking a lot, where they can feel and sense the energy of our presence. They're confident that we will intervene if anything inappropriate happens or something said that could be harmful. But where we don't jump in all the time to protect them or redirect the conversation. A humanistic approach is very non-directive. It's a mindfulness-based approach. It's a way of learning to silence our mind and our ego, to create a place, a space, where the healing power of stories can flow without interruption, without paraphrasing, without analysis, without problem-solving interventions, where that story of trauma or pain or conflict can flow. A humanistic approach is about deeper listening, learning to listen from the heart as well as the head. Active listening, which is the 101 skill taught in all mediation programs and conflict resolution programs, frankly in many restorative programs. and it's taught in many other human services, it's good in limited ways. From my perspective, it's taught far too much and emphasized far too much because it's easy to teach. It's so skill directed. Here's ABC, how you do it. But it's also something we need to come to grips with and look at it from the eyes and sense of those at the other end of, quote, active listening. It can come across very patronizing at times, almost like we're a therapist with them, like we've got the answers. It can come across disrespectful, particularly when you're working with people from different cultures. At the very least, it can, and this frequently occurs, it interrupts the healing power of story. Because if you're paraphrasing every bite-sized little chunk of what people are telling as they're trying to tell their stories, it interrupts the flow of their energy coming out. Now, I want to make something clear. Active listening is good stuff at certain points. But I really encourage, and from a humanistic perspective, an approach, to first create space for deeper listening. And you don't do that through a technique you learn. The facilitator can create that space by focusing on their own energy, by relaxing, by being mindful of their own energy. Are they tight? Are their muscles tight? Is their mind all over the place? Are they thinking of all kinds of to-do lists and things to do tonight? Is their ego running all over the place like, how can I fix this for these people? How can I intervene? To be mindful of all those things, which are all natural things. I've certainly felt them at different times, but to be mindful of that. And when you become mindful of it, then to focus on your breath, to breathe in slowly, deeper. And that can help us kind of break that connection with our ego running wild in our mind, to focus on just breath work, deeper breath, not just that shallow breathing we do all the time, to relax. I'm probably one of the few trainers you'll ever meet that give permission to people I train to mess up, to screw up. I don't want you to, but I would rather you forget some of the, quote, techniques and be more focused when you're actually with the people, to be relaxed, comfortable, with silence, more mindful of your own energy and the other energy of the other people. Because if you're more relaxed and mindful of what's going on, people are amazingly forgiving. If you forget some item you should have mentioned in the opening statement, you can pick it up later. On the other hand, if you become so focused on reading a script, or here's a checklist, I must cover all of these items, and you're moving these papers around on a table and to make sure you do it perfect. You could do it, quote, perfect. But the energy of what people are experiencing is something very, very different. It's not an inviting, comfortable feeling. They're experiencing, person is kind of nervous, and oftentimes they're experiencing this kind of ego energy of, here's this professional that's going to do all this stuff. What I'm sharing with you, it's not some flaky idea. This has also been found in adult learning research over the years. Even as I speak to you at this moment, it's only 10% of what I'm verbally saying that you'll retain. What you're picking up from the energy of my voice, my presence, will be far more. And if we had more time to actually practice this and experience some of what I'm talking about, you'd learn even far more. The point is, the most powerful communication means of the human species is not what comes out of our mouth. Words are important, sure. We need to be clear on what we say. But we need to get away from this illusion that it's words, written words, or just verbal words, that's where the power of our communication comes through. We need to recognize that our presence, the who of the mediator, who we are as people, the who of the facilitator, is as important, if not more important, than the what, the technique. Here's how to do it. In the final analysis, a humanistic approach to mediation and dialogue is a very humbling process. It's coming to grips with the reality that, people who are in conflict or who experience trauma and who come to us, they don't care about the theory of restorative justice or whether it's called conferencing or circles or mediation or all this the whole notion of restorative justice, that's not the issue. They're yearning for some sense of peace, some sense of being able to understand better and to move on in their lives. And that's why the presence, our presence, is so supremely important. Again, I don't want people who I've trained over the years in many, many settings, in many countries, I don't want you to mess up. But if you do, if you forget some of the little guidance that we've learned over the years and some practices or techniques, it's okay. The most important part is to recognize our own humanity, to be present in a way that makes the other parties comfortable. This gets to another very important point, to be flexible with the process. A humanistic approach is not doing it the way Umbright said you have to do it. No. It's learning to be comfortable with silence, being mindful of our own energy, our own ego, our thoughts. And to be mindful means not just that you're aware that your thoughts are all over the place, but you work with breath to kind of break that link between where our mind's going and kind of controlling what's coming out of our mouth. To work with breath, to slow down, breathe slowly. It's based on the reality of recognizing that people need our presence, but not us intervening. They need us to get out of the way. Actually, some of the negative information we found from research over the years has been in a number of cases where the parties themselves expressed they wish the mediator would have stopped talking, or that the mediator seems too tight. They're looking at these notes and kind of reading off cards or a script, and they just want a comfortable place where they can talk directly with the other party. A humanistic approach is based on showing a great deal of respect for the strength and resilience of all parties. Even if they're very angry at each other at this moment and seemingly far from any kind of problem solving or resolution, to recognize that all people have tremendous strength and resilience. And our roles as facilitators, as mediators, is to help their strength, their resilience flow, to de-emphasize us, to de-emphasize this notion that we're the professionals, we have all these skills and we can solve it for them. That's not what a humanistic approach is about. It's also about, as I mentioned earlier, about being flexible. If you're working with someone and trying to create a place where you can do some deep listening, and if it's clear from the nonverbal feedback you're getting back from them that they're not feeling comfortable with that, they might need a little more active listening and paraphrasing and verbal feedback. That's fine. But just be careful when you do that you can withdraw from that. Because most of us as professionals and volunteers, once we start talking, we keep talking. It's hard to reel it back in. In the final analysis, a humanistic approach to mediation and dialogue is about being real. It's about being authentic. It's about recognizing that we are all wounded. We all have wounds, and we all have strengths. And those roles change at different points in our life's journey, the journey of those we're with. It's the ultimate strength-based perspective of working with people. And it's not just unique to conflict or trauma. It's also in nursing and teaching and many other fields, focusing on the strengths of people, not their wounds or brokenness, even though we recognize that we all have those wounds at different levels.